This is going to be a 48-hour review of the new Porsche Cayenne E-Hybrid, as I'll be flying over to the Geneva Motor Show in the next few days, so I'll try and squish as much into the next few days as I possibly can. Now, it's the new Cayenne because it's the latest iteration of a model that spans across 2 decades. But it is only a facelift, which means that a majority of the underpinnings still remain the same, except for the battery, which is now bigger, has a capacity of 25.9 kilowatt hours, which equates to about a third of a Taycan squished back here. A midlife nip and tuck is essentially what this Cayenne is. However, it's not to be taken lightly. The Cayenne topped the sales charts in 2023 with the highest number of deliveries, but there may be some external challenges ahead. So it seems that the UK are in a recession, or at least going into one. So you might be thinking twice about that V8 that's marked this comeback in the S model. The lights at the front and at the rear have been chiseled, which has given them a sharper look. And overall, the changes have given the Cayenne a more dynamic and aggressive look. But for me, Porsche have prioritised and given the Cayenne some bigger implants with regards to changes underneath, a bigger battery and improvements to the electric motor. The E-Hybrid has a 304 brake horsepower V6, which is mated to a more powerful than before electric motor, which in itself produces 176 brake horsepower, all whilst wearing the guise of a luxurious SUV. So you should have all that you need to do your trips to M&S and indeed the school run. So you might find yourself never needing to wake the engine up. It's likely to be a big hit with company car users, and it being a nice blend of EV and combustion engine, this is the one that's probably going to appeal to the majority. And if I had to, I'd go as far as to say it's probably likely to be the best seller, especially in the UK. Maybe the SUV version over the coupe, which is the one we're driving today. I've made no secret of the fact that I like SUVs. I just do. I find them comfortable, practical, really nice to drive, and for me, not only the perfect car to do the longer road trips, but and I'm starting to despise the term a little bit, but to daily. Other than actually tracking a car like this, there's very little that a car of this caliber can't do. So for me, it's the car that ticks many boxes, if not all boxes. A day in the life of me driving generally consists of shoddy roads, potholes, cracks, speed cameras, speed bumps, average speed cameras. So as fun and exciting as it is driving fast sports cars, I can't, or it's very rare that I actually exploit those qualities in a sports car and use it in the way it was intended. For me, it's going to have to be something like this. Unless, of course, one day I have the luxury of having a 911 and a Cayenne, then you've got the best of both worlds, or any other sports car and an SUV. I think those two segments complement each other perfectly. This range starts at £81,900. However, this one does have a few additional options, such as the crayon paintwork, 21-inch exclusive design wheels, adaptive air suspension, and the Bose surround sound system, amongst other things like the first aid kit. £9 for that. It's a £9 option. Could save a life, don't laugh. So this one comes in at just over £92,500. It appears that we've reached the small puddle. What's the worst that can happen? So for that price, not only does it have to give you a nice, powerful, smooth V6, but it's got to save you money where it can. Recession and all. And as I mentioned earlier, thanks to an increased capacity of the battery, you now have a combined electric range of 45 miles, 55 if you're in the city, which for the average commuter is plenty of ground which a Cayenne can cover. It'll also give you a 0 to 62 mile an hour sprint of 4.9 seconds and a top speed of 84 miles an hour in EV only. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. However, it's also got to be able to do this. Oh, This is what I'm talking about. Squeaky bump time. Yes, this is more like it. This is what I mean when I say I quietly prefer this stuff to the track stuff, because there are no flags. There is no speed limit within reason. No real rules to abide by. It's not about the maths or the precision. It's just about raw fun. You can be vague with your input. You just steer in and that'll do. I've got it in off-road 1 mode at the moment. There is an off-road 2 mode where the car goes up by a further 30 millimeters, I think. However, that's dependent heavily on the speed, as if you go too fast, it lowers it back down to its off-road 1 mode, which is only about 15 millimeters over the standard ride height. Yeah, the cameras are now just a big blur. We know that the Cayenne only runs at 5% capacity when it does the shopping run or the school run. But for me, this is where a car like this does its best work. And this is kind of the unfortunate truth when it comes to these sorts of cars, because they're never really exposed to this stuff, which is a shame because it's fun and it's free. We've shaken off what little rust this Cayenne had, having only covered about 4,000 miles. The air suspension is working absolute wonders underneath my bum, and the locking differentials are hard at work making sure that traction is available at every wheel, or simply to ensure that we don't lose any traction on this muddy surface. Okay. Everything's still working. Everything's still working. During our spirited off-road run, I'd managed to put 6 miles worth of energy back into the battery. So I thought I would recharge myself too, so I stopped over for a quick stop at my favourite coffee shop. Right, back to the tarmac. The boot capacity in the coupe has a 434 litre capacity, which is a shortfall of around 111 litres over the SUV. So in essence, you're foregoing a little bit of practicality for aesthetics. Me being a family man, I think I would probably choose the SUV over the coupe, but there's just something about the coupe that's just a little bit more Porsche-like, which I like, which I really like. It's not just the way the coupe looks that makes it a bit more Porsche-like, but it's the cabin too. You'll hear often people talk about the cliche of in the Cayenne or in sportier SUVs, you sit in the car as opposed to sitting on the car. In the many GLEs that I had as a company car, that felt a lot more like you're sitting on the car. But really, I don't really have a preference over which I find to be more comfortable or better. I think it just comes down to preference. But given Porsche's history of being more of a sportier brand, I guess it makes sense. Either way, visibility is great. Even with the window at the back being narrower than the SUV model, it's still very, very good. Driving position's incredibly comfortable. Visibility is great. And if anything, it's probably as comfortable as its Stuttgart counterpart. There is ample space on each seat for every passenger, and the rear seats fold down flat, so if you did have anything extra large that you wanted to put in the boot, you can. As with any car, the MPG figures that you get will be heavily dependent on the way that you drive, how you maximize all the different driving modes, and of course, whether or not you're going to have a charge point at home or a charge point that you're going to have regular access to. And that way you can ensure that you drive in EV mode for as much of your commute as possible. And even if you have to occasionally use the engine, your consumption is going to be well over 80, 90, maybe even 100 miles to the gallon. Having said that, you could easily get 25 to the gallon as well. Just depends on how much you use the V6 over the electric motor. and vice versa. The E-Hybrid does offer you the e-charge mode, which basically means the engine will act as a generator to try and put charge back into the battery. But given the size of the battery now, you do really need to embark on a leggy journey to stand any chance of recharging the battery on driving alone. So plugging it in is really your best option. Due to the Cayenne having a bigger battery and a more powerful motor, not only can it take you farther, but it can prevent the engine from intervening too soon, which all adds up to give you an impressive return on your overall consumption. On the trip back from Porsche HQ, I managed over 64 miles to the gallon, where the charge was on about 80% when I took delivery and 5% when I arrived home. Let's talk performance. A 0 to 62 mile an hour time of 4.9 seconds is ample to get you out of any trouble. The power delivery is more gradual than it is punchy, which is to be expected. As you work your way up the rev range, the car builds in confidence and the power and the speed just keeps gathering and gathering and gathering. It stops well, the brakes are good. You do still get that spongy feel that you find in most, if not all, hybrids, and that's just because it takes a little bit of travel on the brake pedal before the brake pads actually make contact with the discs. And what it does is, during that travel, it recuperates as much energy back into the battery as it possibly can, what would otherwise be lost when you're braking and coming to a stop. And to be fair, it corners really well, considering its footprint and a 2.5 ton weight. It does really well at staying level. There's probably just enough body roll for it to be quite fun around corners, if you can call it that, but for the most part it does really well at staying composed. I mean, you can try and hide it, you can try and disguise it, but you can't run from it. It's physics. Let's call a spade. It's quite heavy, but let's face it, it's not something you're going to complain about, because the upshot of all that is that you get an incredibly soft, supple, comfortable ride. And something else that helps contribute to disguising some of that footprint is the rear wheel steering. So I guess it's fair to say, as an overall package, it works really well. Let's talk a little bit about the likes and the dislikes. Let's start with a few of the likes. In any video that I've done where I've spoken about the wireless charge pad, I've not been very kind, because in my experience, the charge isn't very quick and it boils your phone to about 3,000 degrees. Porsche have listened. See, the charge pad in here is ventilated, so it keeps your phone nice and cool while it's charging, which is brilliant. That is problem solving at its finest. As ridiculous as it sounds, I love that. Another thing, the ride. As smooth as you like, love it. Dovetailing from that is the comfort levels. There really isn't many distractions. I know the passenger has a screen, but I can't see it. There's no over-the-top ambient lighting. The steering wheel is just about perfect. There's 3 buttons and a roller dial thing on each side, and it's very clear what they do. It's not like one button has 50 million different functions. There's no proximity sensors on them. It's just physical buttons, which is great. And that really became apparent when I was driving at night, because I had my rev counter, my speed, my fuel, my charge, and I was just focused on driving the car, which just made a nice change. In terms of dislikes, there's not many, as you'd imagine. However, the 360 camera that you have around the car, which is handy for the sort of driving that we've done, is that they're exposed. So when you have a little bit of mucky weather like we're experiencing today, it really doesn't take much for them to be rendered useless. The other thing is, I've got electric seats with memory, but the steering column is manual. I don't have an electric steering column. I mean, surely that should just go part and parcel of the electric system, where it remembers your driving position, perhaps your mirrors, and your steering column. Not sure about that one. And lastly, the positioning of the gear lever. I'll be very surprised if I'm the only one who's mentioned this. And the thing is, wherever you put it, within reason, yes, you'll get used to it. But for me, it just doesn't feel intuitive enough to have it here. I mean, it's not big anyway, so it's not going to take much real estate just to put it here in its conventional place. It's no surprise that in 2024 we have overly engineered and overly capable SUVs that easily do the daily things, as well as hold its own when the going gets rough. For me, the increased capacity in the battery and a powerful motor gives us a glimpse of what hybrids of the future might look like, and give us hope for those who aren't quite sold on EVs yet. As long as brands such as Porsche continue to push the envelope, which I have no doubt they will, on things like batteries, hybrid tech, EV tech, then performance and efficiency will just continue to improve. And that can only mean good things. So fear not. I hope you've enjoyed this video, found it informative, useful, or at least entertaining. So now I'm going to go and return this back to Reading HQ and get ready for the Geneva Motor Show. So make sure you smash that subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment below. I'll do my best to answer all your questions, and I'll see you in Geneva. Of all the fears that I had going into today, dog that wasn't one of them.
You said it like you said it in the video with that dog. Dog's doing a
Yeah. What is it with me and dog? Oh. Took a while to kick in.